Kat is the wife of Ken Branagh's character, Andre Sater, and when we meet her at the beginning of the film, her marriage has become very estranged. And so, because of various circumstances within the marriage, which I won't give away, she is a woman who is very much entrapped by a number of circumstances and is quite emotionally in a lot of turmoil. And so she finds herself really sort of pushed up against a wall and at the end of her tether in terms of how much longer she can cope with this marriage and with the way her life is at the time when we meet her. And Protagonist kind of enters her life right at the moment where she's at a breaking point. And she becomes involved with his mission, albeit, I would say, relatively reluctantly, because of what's happened to her in her life. I think trust is very difficult for her. And he also appears and is, for so much of the film, to her, an anomaly. And so she's sort of at this precipice where she thinks, do I jump off this ledge into the abyss with this person and join this mission? He seems to need me, and it would appear that I have no choice but to need him. So there's a kind of reluctance to it, but an understanding that whoever this person is, he possesses information, a kind of resilience, and a sort of I think she senses in him very quickly that has a kind of a very deep intelligence that's in a funny way not unlike her own, which is he's a negotiator and so is she. So I think that they kind of meet on this interesting psychological level. And so that's sort of how she becomes involved with him, with the mission. And a lot of it, I mean, we know the protagonist's mission in this film is to do literally with how can he save the fate of mankind. So that becomes, in a way, her mission as well. I remain an enormous fan of Christopher Nolan. I would say definitely more after working with him. I think Chris is somebody who, even if I worked on this film for maybe nearly 7 months, and I think at the end he was as enigmatic as ever, even though I worked so closely with him. I think that the thing about Chris as a human, as a director, and his films is he is a visionary, and the way he chooses the subject material that his films explore is really unlike any other director working. And they are so heightened, and they have this complexity, and they really delve into and unravel extremely complicated concepts. And yet there's something about Chris's films that are also a genre unto their own. They're sort of action and sci-fi and espionage, and they always have these extraordinary actors involved and these amazing performances. It's interesting because Chris's films for me have always been real comfort food as a viewer, and something I return to all the time. And then every time he makes something new, I rush to the cinema to see it as well. So I was a huge fan, and I genuinely never thought that I would work with him. And I was saying to him yesterday that when at the beginning of working with him, before I stepped onto his set, I felt such pressure and sort of terror because I thought, how can I do this? How can I cross that threshold and enter into Christopher Nolan's brain and bring it to life? But he also is an extraordinary director, and he puts you at ease very quickly. I think it's to do with his confidence and his sense of humor as well. And I just trust him so sort of infinitely as an actor. Well, I've also been a huge fan of Ken's for many years. I've seen him obviously in film and television, but I've also seen him on stage a lot. And I always had this enormous respect for Ken and thought he was sort of can do everything. I always thought, well, Ken Branagh can do everything. He can write, direct, act, sing, dance. It's a bit much, actually. He should leave some talent for other people. But working with him, he just has this ability to put you at ease. He's so kind, actually, and very, very generous as a scene partner, but has an ability to sort of keep the energy around the scene on set very focused, but very alive. And I actually think it's partially to do with his sense of humor, which is pretty spectacular. I actually, once waiting to shoot part of the car sequence, which is so high octane, and the emotional current between our two characters in that moment of the film is so dark, and there's so much violence in the air in that moment. And we were sitting waiting to shoot a part of that scene, and he made me laugh so hard that I actually split the seam of my dress. And so I could say that Ken Branagh is genuinely side-splitting, if you will, which he would enjoy. But no, he's a joy. The scope of the film and what Chris wanted to do with the movie was sort of create a vastness and an expanse and a sense of, because the entire world is at stake in the protagonist's mission, we really had to sort of branch out across the globe and put all those places on camera. And because of the way that Chris works, and him wanting to always capture the authentic article, whatever that is, whether it's the actual sea, the actual country, the actual boat, the actual human. So there was a sense of when I entered the film, knowing that we were just going to kind of, me personally and as an artist, just have my kind of horizons massively expanded, which was what the experience of shooting was like in so many ways. I think credit to our crew, really, because the crew that made this film were definitely, they were extraordinary human beings, but they worked so hard. And we would sort of finish shooting in a country and pack up at 9 p.m. and the next day we would all be on this plane and we would travel somewhere else and we would start shooting 24 hours later. And I think the kind of rigor of that, but also the fact that I think it really bonded us traveling that much, and definitely as a cast it really did. Sometimes JD and I would sort of meet up in the different cities we were in, and we would have like a cup of coffee in Estonia, and then 3 days later we would be having lunch in Italy. And so it was so kind of surreal and bizarre, and a massive privilege too, especially because of where we are in 2020, when I think back to just being able to travel out in the world and capture that for people. But now sort of fantastic that we did, really, because when people see the film, they can be in all those places. IMAX cameras, put simply, really make the experience larger than life. But it's also the quality of the film, and I think the way that Hoyte, our cinematographer, shoots, and he is really such a genius, it just immerses the audience into the cinematic experience. But I think watching something on IMAX, inevitably, it hits you in a different way. Literally, you access the film in a different way because it's almost visceral. It's sort of a bodily experience when something is that huge, but captured with the specificity of those cameras that I don't think it's comparable really to anything that people will have seen before.